Senator Anwar.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you again for this. I rise in support of this bill. I wanted to thank Senator Lesser and Senator Kelly for their effort, and Senator Lesser, your very important remarks that you made, that we will have an opportunity to make a difference in the entire country by showing a path of what can be done. And it's not every day that one gets to vote on bills which are going to save lives. And the three bills that we have, this is the third one for the day that we are voting on, or we are going to be hopefully voting on shortly, that this is going to truly save lives. I want to share a concept with everyone, and especially if anybody is not sure they would support this, is that think about oxygen. Each and every one of us breathes. We take it for granted that we are inhaling oxygen because that is part of our existence. That's part of how we are going to survive. In individuals at the cellular level, the glucose which goes in goes through insulin. And if that insulin does not go in, the glucose does not come in. And if the glucose is not in, the cells are unable to function. And for insulin-dependent diabetics, the type 1 diabetics, this is a lifeline. This is their oxygen. And what has been happening is that the cost of this oxygen for their survival has been increased to the point that they're choosing to barely survive, if not die. And then the non-insulin dependent diabetics or the type 2 diabetics who actually depend on insulin ultimately, their insulin resistance requires them to be on insulin. And they're 90% of the population of the diabetics, and they actually require this as well. And they also are making choices not to be able to take the medicine because they cannot afford it, and subsequently have the long-term impact. I want to share a brief story about one of my patients. He was a young gentleman. He actually would come to the intensive care unit with what we call diabetic ketoacidosis, where the lack of insulin leads to the glucose levels being so high that they become acidotic, that they can't breathe, and their blood pressure drops, and they lose all the body fluid in the process. And this is so associated with death in these young people. We have to manage them in the intensive care units. And when he kept coming back, we actually started to say, you have the medicines, we have the prescriptions. The reality was he could not afford the insulin, and he was rationing the insulin. And I think there were some of the people like him who actually came and spoke at the testimony. And then if anybody wants to listen to the testimony of how this is impacting the life of many of the people in our communities, they would recognize that this is real and it's impacting each and every diabetic in some way or the other. The ones who actually do not have the resources, they get impacted the most. So again, the impact, I want to share some numbers. The number of, there are 3 million in our country type 1 diabetics, and there are about 30 million type 2 diabetics. In the state of Connecticut, it's believed that we have 350,000 patients with diabetes. This is actually a few years ago, so the number has increased at this time. In the acute setting, diabetic ketoacidosis is associated with death, and long-term unmanaged or poorly managed diabetes is associated with, it actually is one of the main causes of blindness in the elderly or older patients. It is one of the main cause of renal failure. And if you look at the number of individuals who are on dialysis, they are on dialysis because of chronic diabetes or poorly controlled chronic diabetes. Literally managing diabetes appropriately would protect their kidneys. Any part of the body where there is blood flow, the blood vessels are going to be impacted, including the nerve endings. So the neuropathy associated with this makes the life miserable of individuals when it's not managed. And similarly, strokes and heart attacks this is the leading cause of death in cardiac problems and the causation of that. If you put all of this together, we are making a very important decision. Hopefully every single person would vote for this, because we are making a very important decision as a state, that we are saying that your oxygen, your lifeline is going to be supported, and we will not let people make money off you just because you are asking to survive. And this is something that should have happened a few months ago, and then of course COVID got into the way. But this was a disaster or a pandemic of diabetes that was impacting us way before this current pandemic, and I'm glad we are taking this on because people have been waiting for a long time for this support. So Madam President, I would urge all of my colleagues to please support this bill. This is going to truly save lives. This is one recommendation that is, if you interact with anybody who is diabetic, who is surviving barely because of lack of ability to pay for insulin, this is their lifeline. So thank you again.
Thank you, Senator Anwar. We will move